watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome back to the second half of the Factor Uncensored. It was likely too much for Joe Garcia. He lost his wife, Irma, this week. The teacher who was shot and killed while trying to protect her students from a gunman in Uvalde. Many people called her a hero. 2 days later, Joe died. His family says he was leaving flowers for her on her memorial site. He collapsed from a heart attack when he came back home. One of his nieces announced this news online, writing he died from a broken heart. A therapist tells me this can actually happen after such a traumatic event.
I should note, I'm not a medical doctor, but I will speak on the psychological and traumatic effect that leads to this. Unfortunately for him and others who have passed away in this way, the abruptness and the shock that comes with this level of trauma really takes a psychological effect. It really takes an emotional effect, almost overwhelmingly so. And so when we start having that psychological effect of the trauma and the emotional effect of the despair of it all, it becomes too overwhelming and it begins to release stress hormones that impact the heart. So it starts to impact us physically, and it can be fatal. It can be fatal. In this instance, it was.
And that's what we're seeing in the case of Joe Garcia, his wife. I think they've been married for 24 years, and that's a long time to be with someone in this day and age. And to lose that partner suddenly, tragically, and violently, it can take a toll on you. Yeah,
it's just the simplest way to describe it. It was too much for him. It was too much for him psychologically, emotionally, and physically, and his whole being could not take it, and his life ended as a result. It's really so sad. This shooting is bringing to our attention, of course, we always say, mental health issues and that type of thing. But I think it's so important to pay attention to what these children are experiencing, these shooters are experiencing. Our frontal lobe does not develop until 25. Some people say into our 10th decade of our living. And that is the part that deals with executive functioning, judgment, impulse control, right? So we're dealing with so many mental issues that these shooters are experiencing, and then that the victims have to deal with as a result. We really need to tighten up on our knowledge, or getting experts in these schools and around these families that can explain what's happening, help them process through it, and maybe even prevent some of these things in the future.
This is going to be a very long journey for those survivors. There's always that survivor's guilt, and it's going to be a struggle for them to, I guess, find peace after dealing with so much violence and so much tragedy in one day, and losing people that you may have seen on a day-to-day basis as a co-worker or children you're used to seeing since kindergarten. It's going to be tough on them all to recover.
Yeah. As a means of just emotional and psychological protection, we humans like to make sense of a thing. Oh man, this happened, but it happened because. That happened, but it happened because. But when we can't make sense of a heinous crime such as this, it leaves you feeling emotionally, physically, and psychologically unsafe, possibly forever, but definitely for years. And so we start to see that in our behaviors, not trusting, siloing yourself, becoming more aloof, because you have experienced such a such a traumatic sideswipe of events that you don't know who to trust and you don't know who you can feel safe around. So the healing process for these survivors is such a mountain that they are going to be climbing, and it will take quite some time.
And you make a very good point there, because what we realized and what we had was an instant motive in the Buffalo shooting, because the kid made it clear, the 18-year-old made it clear that I hated Black people. I wanted to go and kill Black people. The motive was there. We knew what we were angry about. In this one, it's different because we truly don't know his absolute motive. We're getting mixed stories. Some say he was bullied. Others say he was just a little aggressive, according to his mom. And it's it just doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah, that's the immediate thing we're going to do. We're going to try to find the motive. We're going to try to find the why, because it makes us feel safe. As soon as we find it out, we feel safe. But unfortunately, it also allows us to somewhat distance ourselves from it. Right? Oh, he was mentally ill. Okay, that's not us. We won't have that problem. We feel safe with it. What we need to recognize is, despite the why, we have to fix this, because this can be anybody at any given time. And we don't want to feel safe. We don't want to feel unsafe with that truth, but that's what we're facing. We're going to have to find a remedy to this in a much deeper way. And again, for the survivors, they have to have experienced this already. They've already gone through it. And so their healing begins. But I think the biggest gift we can give the survivors is taking the steps to confront this in a big way, emotionally, psychologically, legally, go through the laws, go through the policies, but we have to start confronting this in a deeper way.
Absolutely. We want to wish our best and send our best to the Garcia family. Not only have they lost a mother, now they've lost a father, and they leave behind 4 children. Dr. Jasmine Boone, thank you for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored.
Have a good one.